Today we have Robinson Berkey with us, who is the co-founder of the Wormhole Foundation. And there's a reason that there's not C-suite people, and maybe he'll talk about that. But thank you for being here, Robinson.
Thanks for having me, Jacob. I'm super excited to be on the program today.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. So for people that don't know you or what Wormhole is, could you give them kind of just a high level and maybe a little bit of background on yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in crypto professionally for about 5 years now. My kind of pill moment was actually when I was young. I bought an fake ID, as some people do when they're younger, and it was on this website. Maybe some of your audience remembers this website called ID Chief. And you could buy fake IDs, and I did it with Bitcoin. So that was the first time I ever touched it. However, in 2017, I started mining personally and built up some mining rigs, and was actually mining Ethereum at the time when it was proof of work consensus. Obviously now it's proof of stakes. Many people are familiar with, but I've been in working in startups and different like growth go to market functions for the a little over a decade. Some failed, some were successful as things typically go, and I was at DoorDash for, about 4 years and, finally kinda made the leap professionally. So I was at Jump Crypto where we actually incubated Wormhole. For those of you who aren't familiar, Jump Trading is a large hedge fund within the US, and they have, locations outside the US as well. But we started building crypto products there, and Wormhole was incubated there as a way to actually, at the time, solve a problem of connecting Solana and Ethereum. And then since then, obviously, we connect many networks, do tons and tons of asset transfers. So there's been a lot that's happened in the past 4 years to kind of get us there. But at our core, we're an interoperability protocol, just connecting all the blockchains and letting assets flow seamlessly between them.
I love that. Yeah. So I mean, it sounds great conceptually, right? And people understand that you need interoperability between these things because let's say you mint an NFT over there on Ethereum. It's a board ape. But you want to use it in some type of DeFi protocol over there on Solana, right? So this is kind of the
Mhm.
basic use case that you guys originally solved was interoperability between those two blockchains and how do they talk to each other and how could you use collateral or something that exists on one chain in an environment somewhere else that might be better suited versus what's available on the other. Is that kind of the gist of it?
Absolutely, and fun anecdote. I think back in 2022, we actually had a ton of board apes and CryptoPunks being sent to different networks. There was at one point there was someone who had 50 punks, and they even created a Twitter account for it, and it made a whole thing of like punks on Solana. So that's effectively it. And sometimes I even like to zoom out a bit too and think about interoperability as a concept, but where we've seen it in other industries. So we didn't invent this kind of long word here in crypto, right? So like in interoperability, other places we see it is the banking system, actually, right? So like you have all these banks, they're connected by Swift. Swift is like an accounting system, helps you wire money. In the US, we have, all these different healthcare systems. Your data is in these silos, and you need a way to kind of get data between the healthcare networks. A lot of health systems will use something like Epic, it's called, but like the ability to share patient information. We see it in transportation with cities and so on. And really, all we've done is taken this concept and applied it to blockchains. Because originally, actually, when we first started out, a lot of people thought everything was going to be on one. It was the contrary thought at the time, actually, to do something where there's going to be multiple blockchains. And now, of course, we live in a multi-chain world, and a lot of people know that. And so it's been we've kind of found good product market fit because of it.
No, I think you guys are super well positioned. So on that, like you guys are obviously a leader in this space, but there are other people trying to solve this in maybe similar or dissimilar ways. You've got Chainlink with CCIP or cross-chain interoperability protocol, and you've got Axelar also connecting many blockchains, utilizing their infrastructure. So what sets you guys apart from some of the other competitors in the space? And do you guys have a specific niche of like we do this better than them, and this is kind of our go-to-market strategy?
Absolutely. So I'll take this question in a few parts. Number one, I think it's important to understand the opportunity size. So it's like understand that and why there's, fierce competition. And then I'll get into, some of the just cold hard facts on why we're best. I'm not going to beat around the bush. It's pretty clear if you look on chain. Number one, if you think about the opportunity size here, so I like to compare us to Swift, first of all, because the main benefit of interoperability and kind of the main product market fit for a blockchain in general is an alternate financial system. So what does that mean? Like for us in particular, we're going to move money. We move a lot of money between a lot of different blockchains. It's tens of hundreds of millions on a regular basis, 24-hour weekly basis. So if you have all of these blockchains, and we're going to have more maybe, or there's more adoption, it benefits everyone to have a consolidation actually of the way in which this money moves. If you think about it, Swift is like one entity, and I think they're connected to tens of thousands of banks internationally. And that's because it's less, adoption for these blockchains, less token or financial standards they have to adhere to. If builders want to build things with our interop technology, it's less standards, overhead, etc. So it benefits everyone to have fewer. And if you have all these blockchains and just a few of the rails, that means you have a lot of pricing power and network effects. So there's been a kind of a strong consolidation to just a few players. And you've named some, Jacob, around the Chainlinks, the Axelars of the world, us. I think now maybe where we kind of do really well is a few areas. Number one is just straight up the metrics. We have the most messages or data packets ever sent, which is a good proxy for activity. We've done the most volume between chains, so in the 60s of billions. And then where I think we're really, really unique is our institutional adoption. So I think with crypto, one thing you have to be is discernful, right? So you have to be able to see, okay, there's a lot of marketing, what actually is happening on chain. I think where Wormhole does a really good job is we work with BUIDL exclusively. BUIDL uses Wormhole to settle between chains. BUIDL is BlackRock's flagship money market fund. This is the same for Apollo, their private credit fund, VanEck, their money market fund, Mercado Bitcoin's tokenized assets. We just announced Hamilton Lane. That's a $935 billion asset manager. They are all issuing assets on chain, and Wormhole is effectively how they're able to move between the chains. And so we kind of, because we're leading on the metric side and, without getting too technical, leading on the security front, institutions care about security. We've seen those tailwinds go into our institutional business. And yes, there's oftentimes announcements and things like that may be made from competitors, and not knocking anyone in particular, but for us, like we look for activity on chain, and we're moving these institutional assets today. So I think that's really one of the core differentiators besides just winning out on all the metrics.
So you guys are focused more on RWAs, tokenization of real world assets, financial products, um, things that have high value that you know um, institutional players would like to exchange between one another. You're not necessarily going after like the mom and pop uh, peer to peer payment rails. This is more of a high value, very secure infrastructure that allows enterprise adoption at scale for institutions to participate in RWAs.
I would say that's where our focus and our strong product market fit is, but we definitely do focus on stablecoins. We have a stablecoin function within our business. We work with some of the bigger players, stablecoins out there right now. And so, for instance, think about, I'll give an example to the audience. If I'm Polymarket's on Polygon, right? So if you want to place a bet or a prediction on Polymarket, you're going to pay in USDC on Polygon. However, wouldn't it be great if I could just go to Polygon? I could have whatever USDC from any chain, name a chain, BNB. But let's say Polymarket is on Polygon, so they want to accept USDC only on Polygon, but I have USDC on BNB. What happens is you can still place that prediction, and Wormhole routes it back so that they can accept only Polygon USDC, but anyone can come and pay or place a prediction in a stable coin of whatever they have. It can also be a different one. It doesn't just have to be a different chain. It could be USDT. So for us, we have a stablecoin business. We have the RWA business that we're just strongly successful in. And then there's the business that like is kind of more permissionless, and a lot of like the interop players are in, which is meme coins, right? Trump meme coin going cross chain with Wormhole, like as an example. You have lots and lots of assets on chain, and they need to move between the chains. And we've made that largely permissionless, meaning like anyone can come and do it. So we just, that part of the business is kind of almost runs itself in a way, because it's centralized, permissionless, and people, if they want to issue an asset on another chain, they can do that with Wormhole pretty easily with no code. No code.
Oh, wow. So what actually settles the value in y'all's infrastructure? Do you have a token that is the wormhole token that moves the value and settles that between counterparties?
Absolutely. So the Wormhole token, I guess the way the security works is Wormhole is a proof of authority network is what we call it. But essentially there's 19 validators that are fully doxed, meaning like we know who they are.
There they are.
One of them is Google Cloud, for instance. And they verify every message that comes through Wormhole. So every data packet. And you can think about a piece of data essentially means an asset transfer because that's what 90%, 95% of the business is. And these validators, of course, are incentivized by, similar to like a proof of stake network, incentivized by W, which is our native token. We also have voting with the native token. We're about to launch, being able to pay with the native token, obviously via the front ends. So there's a number of different ways in which the token itself kind of plays within the network. But obviously it's core to the security of the infrastructure.
Okay. So, but it moves the value also between counterparties within your ecosystem, or is it used more for governance and authority?
More for governance and authority and payments. It doesn't move the value necessarily. So the value is like the way in which the value would actually move is we have these smart contracts. Let's just say there's USDC on Solana,
And
burn it.
here and then,
Yeah,
burn
burn or
it.
lock. Exactly. Exactly. Yep. Exactly. So the W token, it plays a role in the security part of that process, but it doesn't necessarily move the value.
Okay. Yeah. So for people that aren't familiar, if you wanted to move from one chain to another, just like we talked about there, you probably have to, burn an asset here. You can't rehypothecate or like have it exist in two places unless it's locked and can't be moved, right?
That
Because then, um, you could, run off with it or do something else that wouldn't be great for the transaction or the counterparty that is reflecting that value somewhere else. So,
exactly. Like a good way to think about it, to your point, is like it's like an accounting system, and it's got to make sure you can't just print money out of nowhere. So it's an accounting system that makes sure, like, hey, this thing is locked over here. Okay, I'm gonna let you mint the equivalent version over here on this chain, or burned. I'm gonna let you mint the equivalent on this chain. So it's really important that the trust and the decentralization is in place there because it's an accounting system for, everything on chain at this point.
yeah, that's incredible. So like I mentioned, CCIP, are you guys an Oracle too, or is that a separate function from what you guys provide?
So so CCIP, the way I would think about this is like Chainlink kind of has two core businesses, or maybe they would say three. I'm not speaking for them. But CCIP is their product that competes kind of within the asset layer that Wormhole is dominant in. They have an Oracle product that provides price feeds to DeFi protocols that, they're largely known for. CCIP is a product they came out with after that, isn't, this at the same, like, I would just say same adoption as their Oracle feeds. But the interesting thing about Wormhole, and a lot of people don't know this, is like asset transfer we're leading on, but a whole nother part of our business is actually powering oracles. So
Oh, wow.
Pith, for if folks in the audience are familiar, or Redstone, these are probably within top four of the most successful oracles. Obviously, Chainlink's got a strong spot at the top, but Pith and Redstone are right up there. So all of Pith's infrastructure is powered by Wormhole. So the way Pith works is they fork Solana. They have institutions. So think about like a Jane Street or something. Their whole business is based off having really, really good price data so they can trade against it and fast. So what they do is they broadcast that data to the PithNet, which is the fork of Solana. We pick it up and we send it with Wormhole to all these different chains. And so this is happening, tens of thousands of price feed updates per day. And then we have the same, one of our customers again is Redstone. So they're not whole infrastructure is empowered by Wormhole, but a portion of it is. His whole infrastructure is. So I guess one of the differences is like we power Oracle price feeds. We don't have an Oracle price feed product ourselves, but we are really strong and known for kind of our asset transfer, which I think is kind of the main thing that most people will use or interact with anyway.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So you partner with these other oracles that want to move the data packets and provide that pricing data inside of these financial products, and you guys route that to the counterparty to make sure it gets used in the smart contract the way it's supposed to.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep. Yep.
Okay. No, that's really insightful. So what are you most excited about on the horizon here? Like, what are you guys working on that really gets you jazzed up?
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean there's always quite a bit. So for context, our team, we're a small but mighty team at Wormhole. We have just over 100 people working full time on the protocol. We are, launching new products all the time. We have a research org. We come from a high frequency trading firm. So a lot of what we do is pretty cutting edge and things that we put out. So there's a few products we're coming out with. We're working on different types of bridges that help provide yield potentially. We're working on faster and faster transactions always, right? We're coming from a world where, Ethereum finality takes 15 minutes, and that means that your bridge transfer takes 15 minutes. People want this, right? So we've gone from 15 minutes. Now we're around 6, and we're working on 1 second, 6 seconds, sorry, not 6 minutes, 6 seconds. We're working on one. But I would say more broadly, we're really focused on stablecoin adoption. So getting as many stablecoins to use our rails as possible, which is important, especially for investors and those that want to get involved with the network. The Wormhole benefits from network effects. Sometimes I think about it like a Uber or a DoorDash, right? The more restaurants or the more drivers and more users that use it, the more it's like, sticky. And so for Wormhole too, the more assets, the more users, the more applications that use it, the more sticky and harder kind of to replace it becomes. And so we really want to become that standard. And then we're working on, a lot of things that drive value to W, right? W holders are an important part of the ecosystem. So we launched a staking program. We have staking utility. So to get access to some of our products as developers, you'll need to stake the asset, or get access to the network, you'll need to stake it. So we're rolling some of that out. And I think lastly, what I would say is beyond just a lot of product work and W related stuff, we've got some large integrations on the horizon. And no, we don't typically announce things until we have mainnet transactions happening. It's just kind of a thing we do. We like to try and be a little bit more intellectually honest on that front. And so we have big stablecoin partnerships coming out. We're going to continue beating the RWA or institutional drum. We've got some bigger banks that are actually going to be announced imminently within the next week or two. So there's always something going on in one of these buckets, whether it's product, whether it's token, whether it's partnerships. And so I'd say across all of those, we've got exciting stuff cooking, and it's hard to choose.
Yeah. No, it sounds like a lot of fun all the time. I'm sure you some days you wake up and beat your head against a wall. Um, but you're excited to do it.
Yes.
That is.
Yes. I mean, a lot of it is just like having I think this is for anyone starting something, is just having the kind of resiliency or relentlessness, if you to like problem, solve, problem solve, problem solve. Like it's just over and over. And so I think we've gotten to a good point of hitting like the critical point of adoption and things like that. But now we've gone 0 to 1, and we're looking to go 1 to 10 now. Is kind of how I would best describe it.
Fantastic. So you have this token, right? But
Yeah.
you mentioned, you're part of the foundation. You guys are a nonprofit and you guys make grants to people that are developing on the network. Is there a for-profit component to your business, or look to expand in that direction? So maybe, there's some type of exit. A lot of people that start a business want to have a liquidity event at some point. So what does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, so for us, we're actually very much so. I'm gonna be careful how I say this. First off, is we fully plan on being as decentralized as possible. However, I've been in the industry for a while, and I've seen what max decentralization can do to a protocol. Meaning, you get in this quagmire of decision making, things slow down, you aren't as competitive within your category. And seeing that and knowing where Wormhole needs to go, and knowing how competitive our space is and how big the prize is, I want to make sure we have decentralized decision making. But at the same time, I want to make sure we're not like losing our edge, right? And so, why I say that and what that means is that we don't intend to necessarily kind of go through any sort of exit or anything like that. I mean, you never know. Especially right now, I would say we're kind of in an M&A period, and we're definitely taking a look and getting serious about certain things in that regard. But for us right now, what we're doing is we're turning on revenue. Right, we're turning on revenue in a meaningful way, and we're trying to bring that back to token holders in the most productive way possible. That's our kind of immediate, I would say, like, it's not in the realm of for profit, but it's making money. What do we do with that money type situation? And The more network.
Holders.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think one thing a lot of protocols are looking for, right, is we've had an abundance of regulatory clarity. So I'm grateful, including the White House report yesterday. That was great to see. Obviously, the Genius Act, we're gonna have a ton more stable coins. But one of the things that's still unclear is, and this the market structure bill, I think will hopefully help with this, but how do we pass the revenues from a successful protocol back to token holders, right? Once we get clarity there, you'll start to see protocols kind of separate those that are successful from those that are, because I'm not going to want to hold a token that, isn't going to, potentially pass some of that revenue or some of that success back to me. So we don't think as much about our for-profit exit strategy as much as how do we generate as much fees as possible from being a valuable product and then reward those people that are involved in the ecosystem.
Love that. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
completely different paradigm than stocks where you're getting a, distribution or a dividend, on a quarterly basis. These rewards could be streamed real time, but it's for your participation within an ecosystem that benefits the whole versus, you know, shareholders versus employees versus customers, where sometimes those incentives between the three or what's best for each isn't always aligned. Whereas in this ecosystem, you want all of those things to be within alignment and everybody's benefiting everybody else, but also being compensated for their efforts. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you said it really well.
um, so this has been awesome. Um, anything that you think you'd like to share with people or that you can? You said you got some exciting stuff coming up. If people want to participate or work with you guys in some capacity, they feel like there's some synergy here between what they're building and what you are. Is there a way to reach out or kindle that relationship?
Absolutely. I mean, the first thing I'll say to kind of keep an eye out for is, 2021, 2022, one of the things I heard all the time, or maybe even back early before that, is the institutions are coming, the institutions are coming. Largely didn't. If I were to defend the industry, what I would say is, okay, we had some black swan events and it kind of says that, right? So that's understandable. Now, from my vantage point and where I sit, the institutions are here, right? Like I can show you on-chain transactions. TVL for RWAs is up and to the right. I think it's sitting at like 30 billion on chain now, which is still just a drop in the bucket compared to what we could really see. And now that next frontier is seeing those RWAs in DeFi. We're starting to see that now as of a couple months ago. Morpho on Polygon has a few markets. Drift on Solana has a few markets. Athena on Ethereum has a few markets for BUIDL and these various RWAs, and Wormhole's kind of shuttling them around. And one area I think that could be interesting for a lot of listeners is, number one, kind of getting excited that the institutions are in fact here. But number two, starting to see like where those flows are going. So, maybe I think a good place to look, wormholescan.io, you can kind of see flows between blockchains. So that's always a fun tool to use. But in terms of if you want to get involved or want to, any more questions or anything like that, obviously wormhole.com, anything wormhole, we pretty much have the domain name. So usually across all socials. And then myself, just Robinson on Twitter or X, excuse me. So happy to chat, happy to, answer any questions and get feedback. Yeah.
What was the catalyst for you guys to choose Wormhole versus something else as the name?
It's funny. We've been every I think company should second guess things that they hold like extreme that have just always been. For instance, like the name's always been Wormhole. We can never change. Well, no, sorry, there was actually an original name, but like it's largely always been Wormhole. We can never change it, but we have started to see the institutional adoption, like with all of these bigger like BlackRock, et cetera. And we're like, is Wormhole like the name we should have, right? Like
Is it
it,
institutional enough for?
yeah, yeah, yeah. My counter actually, just give a sneak peek in the conversation was like, what about Google, right? What is Google? And then the counter to that was like, Google's a name that doesn't have worm in it. And I was like, fair, fair. So, I mean, I think when we were thinking back, so just to give some context, like originally the name was Certus One, but we quickly named it to Wormhole. And the idea is for those people who aren't familiar, and I thought a lot of people knew this, but I've come to learn that's not the case. Wormhole is not a worm in a hole or not a hole for a worm. It's this concept in physics. Most people probably know a black hole. The idea behind a wormhole is actually in physics or sci-fi movies. It's this idea that you could travel through time, right? So you could go in one side and come out the other. And I think if you think about what wormhole's ultimately doing, especially at the time when we launched, you were doing something that was formerly or prior to that impossible, right? It was kind of like, how do you send an asset from Ethereum to Solana? And so you just kind of send it through almost like this thing, and it comes out on the other side. So the name itself, it works quite well, and at least for the original purpose. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say we have kind of thought, is this the best for the future? Rebrands can always happen. Facebook to Meta, like, I guess they kind of still have both. So we're thinking a lot about it. I would say one thing too, as I'm talking about this, Jacob, is the other flagship products that we have. That's a big important brand is Portal. So portalbridge.com is how you access a lot of the assets that flow across Wormhole. So that's just another thing for those that want to use the product or test it or anything like that. Portalbridge.com is like what you can get your hands on as a user. Wormhole is more of a B2B product. So it's, what developers would use to connect all these chains. Yeah.
No, I think it's a very appropriate name. Uh,
Okay, that's good.
I understand what a wormhole is in my mind. It allows you to transport from one space and time to another,
Yeah.
problems basically, right? Through
Yeah.
space and time. So, I think it's very, uh, you're on point with it and it's good branding. But
Yeah.
Portal sounds pretty good too.
Yeah, Portal Bridge is great, and we'll probably hope to get, Portal across everything too. And funny story is if you think about Wormhole, and if I ask you this question and you kind of had to go and figure this out, what would the ticker be, right, for your token? And we had to think about that. This was a long, big
Gotta be
debate,
worm.
right? Exactly. So a lot of people were like, it's got to be Worm. A lot of people were like, it's got to be Hole.
Either one of
And
those.
so
W
yeah.
token's great. You did good.
Yeah. So finally, but at the time, single token tickers were just like wild for crypto. It's like, we can't do this. If you go to stock market, you know, all the single token tickers are taken. It's like a big deal, kind of. I think, I don't know. Like, yeah, everyone. I think Wayfair is the stock market for W. But so we're like, we'll kind of start this kind of single ticker meta, and we've seen a few others. I think there's probably like 6 or 7 at this point, but W just made sense given the word, and so we're sticking with it.
I love it, dude. Well, thank you again for taking the time out of your schedule and sharing this with our audience. I think a lot of people are going to get some insights here that they definitely didn't know beforehand. And I think you'll probably have some people reach out. So any final parting thoughts?
It's going to be an exciting rest of the year, so buckle up. Let's go.
Yeah. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.